For the March 2022 member spotlight, we have Ann Graff, Assistant Professor in the School of Library and Information Science at Simmons University in Boston, Massachusetts. Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
Our first question is, what skills does a person need to be successful in the field of information science?
That's a really good question, and it's really broad. There are so many different pockets within library and information science that you can specialize, and so sometimes it's really hard to answer a question like that. I think one of the main things that is required is curiosity. Obviously, you know, there's all the broad spectrum of skills that we talk about, from, you know, being able to do a good reference interview, being able to question people's information needs and find out what they're really looking for, having a good technological basis so that you can use the systems that we need to help people find and use information, vet information. But I think also it's really important to just have a curiosity and a willingness to learn, and also kind of an open mind that seeks to understand different points of view, because you're going to get so many different interactions with different people from different backgrounds, different languages, different technological abilities, different socioeconomic backgrounds, cultures, all sorts of different identities that you're going to come, you know, into interaction with. So I think it just pays to be super curious, you know, to be able to think outside of your upbringing, the way you grew up, the way you approached information, and to be open to the ways that other people might be approaching it, because we all do these things differently.
Great, thank you. What skills and knowledge are overemphasized or underemphasized in preparation for the study or practice of information science?
Well, I don't want to downplay the need for a technological expertise or you know, a technology background. I think that's really important, but sometimes I think it's emphasized to a point that people who aren't like able to, you know, create Python queries or you know, do whatever it is that they think that they need to be able to do, are kind of intimidated, and they think, oh, I can't do this. You know, we have to take these core courses, and we have to take a basic technology course. And I really would hope that people aren't intimidated by that. For those of us maybe who don't come from a computer science background, or don't have that, or didn't grow up with that, it's okay. There's a lot of other things that can be emphasized as well. And again, it's like the previous question. There's so many different kind of hidden corners within library and information science that people can specialize, and they can kind of find their way in. I think that we really need to be sensitive. Again, I'm going to come back to this theme often, I think, during this interview. We need to be sensitive to all the different ways that people approach information and all the different backgrounds that people have, not just assuming that everybody grew up with the same experience that we may have had. So I think that's important to, you know, for anybody who's interested in this field. The whole point is going to be to help people with their information needs, whether that's from designing systems, using all that technological background, or it's from, you know, being able to listen to somebody's request, kind of listen to somebody formulate their information need and try to help them to find what they need, but also to be able to kind of explain what you're doing when you're looking for information, explain to them the different approaches to finding information, to vetting information. So I think we need to have an emphasis. Sometimes I think we need a little more emphasis on, you know, how to deal with the public, how to deal with different kinds of conflict resolution, and being sensitive to differing viewpoints, while also trying to be, you know, to provide information on all different types of topics to all different kinds of people.
Thank you. What parts of information science give you the most joy and enable you to continue this work?
It's funny because I was raised by two librarians. My parents met in library school in the 1950s. They met at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So I've grown up in this household where, library science was just ingrained in me. We were very frequently at the library. My mother was the public librarian in the city of Milwaukee. My father was the city records manager for the city of Milwaukee also. So it just seems like a natural fit for me. And also, I mentioned curiosity earlier. I have just a very bouncy brain that bounces all over the place. And I find this field to just be fascinating because it's so meta. There's so many different areas that you can bounce up against in this field. I've started out really focusing on information organization, and that's still the core of what I teach and what I research. But I'm kind of bouncing up against museum work and object documentation, art documentation. And I just feel that it's a field that you can really go where your passion leads you, so to speak. Especially, if you get into academia like I have, and you get to teach and you get to research, I can look at things that interest me, and I can apply my background in information organization to things that I'm interested in. So I've done a lot of research on, graffiti art and how it's being documented around the world, how it's being discussed. And for me, that's just a joy. That's just fun. It's really cool to be able to do that. I'm also, looking more at object collections now, and also documentation, control vocabularies for describing objects, as well as different types of art. So again, it's a passion of mine, art and, collecting. I am a collector. You can probably see from my background, I have a doll collection, and, I'm starting to look at things that combine what I do in my professional life with what I do in my personal life. And that's really a privilege. I mean, it really is to be able to do something like that. Also, I think the students are, it's not always easy, but they really are a source of joy. When you can work with students and you can introduce some complex concepts and systems and theories, and you can see them get it and see them appreciate it, I think that's one of the funnest parts of my job. I never thought I would be a teacher. I was married for many years to a teacher, and I never understood what he did. I thought, oh my gosh, I don't ever want to do that. That sounds just awful. And now it's like one of the highlights of my job. I get to work with students, and I get to introduce some of these complex things. And I remember struggling with them when I did my master's degree. I remember, how hard it was for me to try and create a Dewey number and to deconstruct a classification number. And so that's actually one of the more fun things for me right now, is to be able to sit down with students who are really struggling with some of these things. And, you don't have to become a cataloger or anything like that, but some of these things are hard. And it's really been fun for me to sit down with students. And every time I have to explain, some of these harder concepts or some of these, more complicated tools that we use, it kind of helps me learn more about myself and how I learn and how students learn. And, it's kind of this iterative process. It just gets better and better as it goes on. And I've also learned an incredible amount from my students and from the different ways they learn. That has been really amazing for me. My brain doesn't always work the same way as other people. I think I have ADHD. I was diagnosed later in life. Everything made sense once I got that diagnosis, but I can see it in some of the neurodiverse students that I have, and meeting them and going, yeah, I get it. I get your brain maybe does things differently, and maybe it's not like mine, but maybe it's different. So that has been just really cool for me to be able to talk to students and to be able to acknowledge that we all learn differently, and maybe what I'm doing in the classroom isn't the best way for you to learn. Let's meet on the side. I meet over Zoom a lot with students and just go over things. And I think that's been one of the richest parts of my job. I mean, you talk about joy. There's so much joy in being able to, work with the things that I love and people that I love, and, carry out research. It's really cool. But working with those students and, seeing them understand something that is pretty complex has really been pretty much the highlight, I think, so far.
Great, thank you. Have you recently witnessed any noticeable shifts within the greater information science community?
Um, I think that, we've always kind of had this mantra that we need to be accessible. We need to embrace broad viewpoints. We need to, honor different ways of seeing and knowing and gleaning information. But it seems in the past, I know in the United States, at least, we've had a rough decade. We've had a lot of unrest in various sectors of our society. I'll just put it that way. And I think that all of the things that we've always kind of valued in the field, as far as diversity, equity, inclusion, things like that, are even more important now. I think we're still struggling as a field to really understand what that means and, to do better. But it seems that libraries in general are one of those arenas where we take this stuff seriously and we're trying to stand up and do things that are right. We still have a lot of work to do, but I think that's just really come home within the community that I've seen over the past, about the past decade. I'd like to see a lot more, obviously, but I do think that that's been a positive thing.
Great, thank you. And then lastly, why did you decide to become an ASIS&T member?
Oh, that's really interesting. I was trying to think back how long ago that was. It was either during my master's or my PhD studies. And to be safe, I'll say it was probably during the PhD studies, because we had a chapter on campus where I did my degree at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and it was very easy to become involved. And it was kind of the main, or one of the main overarching professional organizations. I mean, there's all these little niche organizations, if you're in special libraries or academic libraries or things like that. But ASIS&T really, for me, kind of encapsulates, my career goals, my career involvement, my research, things like that, a little bit better than, say, like ALA, because I'm just, I'm not so much focused on just libraries. I'm into kind of a little bit broader cultural heritage organizations. And I found it to be a very welcoming place to be, especially for a student. It was very easy to get involved from the beginning as a student, because they always had, things to welcome new members. They had these discounted rates for students, so we could get in and, enjoy some of the perks. And we had a good group going on campus. We have a good group now at Simmons on our campus as well. So I think that it was just a very, almost default decision. It was there and it was very easy to be involved, and I found it to be a very welcoming community right from the start. And, as soon as I did finish my studies, it was very easy to move into service and into, regular attendance at conferences and being involved. So I've been involved, for years now, and I've really enjoyed it. And just, I'm involved with the Arts and Humanities Special Interest Group, the Classification Special Interest Group, and there's, again, like I mentioned earlier, there's plenty of these little corners where you can find your people within ASIS. So there's a lot going on, and I'd recommend it to anybody who's really looking for kind of a home within this field.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Anne. And if you would like to be featured as a member in our member spotlight in the future, please contact me at pyonker@asist.org. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.